dirt being thrown into the air as those heavy rockets just pound the ground as mercilessly as if it was actually the enemy itself. And the Panther now joining in. Panzer 6 dispatching is now under a lot of fire. The high velocity gun of the Panther was pretty much able to penetrate any armor during the war. In fact, not even the Persian could match it in penetration. The only gun that could match it was the high velocity 88mm gun of the King Tiger and Jagd Panther. Well, that and of course the 128mm gun of the Jagd Tiger. But I doubt we will be seeing that right away. Not unless they do a new game set during the Battle of the Ardennes. And my goodness, another heavy rocket artillery rush right down on the Pershing. My goodness, it shall not survive that, and looks like the American base will not either. Triage center is out, and the German armors desperately holding on. Panther leading the charge while Panzer force are getting out of there. And the Panther just blasts away with all of its machine guns and of course its high velocity 75mm gun. Quite the danger. Not mounted on a lot of other tanks. In fact, the only one other vehicle to receive this gun was in fact the Jagdpanzer IV, which itself actually ended up being used as a sort of tank. Of course, it didn't have the turret, so of course was a lot less useful, but still, of course, was still lethal. Panther, though, getting out of there, since this gun is probably firing away with armor-piercing rounds, which will still be able to penetrate that armor and still do quite a bit of damage. One thing to note about American anti-tank guns with armor-piercing rounds, they in fact do more damage than the Flak 88 and the King Tiger for that matter. Oh wait, the King Tiger certainly. I'm not entirely sure the Flak 88 actually does more damage. I'm a bit uncertain of that. And MG42 team cleared out. Veterans free for those riflemen, making them a lot more lethal. But I think it's too late though. Barely any infantry left. Barely anything left. Now Volksgarde is moving in with BARs and Veterans free, making them quite the tough customers. And we are seeing what might be an attempt at getting another Pershing into the field. We shall have to see. In fact, let us speed things up, since I doubt anything will be happening for the moment. No. Never mind. German assault moving in. Panther and Panzer IV once more on the spot. The rifleman moving in to try and provide cover alongside that anti-tank gun. The anti-tank gun being the only thing that can actually save them now. Sticky bomb on the Panzer IV. Grenade on the rifleman doing quite a bit of damage. Flamethrowers forced to retreat. The rifleman as well. Anti-tank gun continuing to fire away desperately, doing its best to clear out that Panzer IV, but now getting simply overwhelmed by grenadiers and Volksgrenadiers. And there we go. The anti-tank gun is no more, and now the tank depot is taking quite a bit of fire as well. It looks like Kreaken is not happy at all. One can certainly understand why, but his defensive strategy simply did not work out for him, as he simply allowed the German forces to of course build up the necessary to just punch him in. And I disagree on the Pershing is bleep. It certainly is effective, but again, you can't really just use it defensively. You have to use it probably with support, and of course in a proper attacking position. Instead, he used it awfully defensively, and of course he didn't really use the advantage you have there when he could have pushed towards the west, really forced out the German defense line and made it a lot more weak, and of course increased the effectiveness of his own forces. That is rather the trouble, I feel. Instead, he continued attacking from the same point, which of course only strengthened the German defense and of course allowed them to just concentrate their own forces. That's of course something you want to avoid. You don't want to do the sort of run into a wall approach, as that is only going to end you up with a lot of casualties, a lot of death.
We have lost a unit.
And certainly looks like to be a slaughter for the 4th Infantry Division, as the 116th applies the final killing blows. And looks like this Veterans of the 3 Rifleman team is also going to be lost to the ages. And we are seeing a Pershing being desperately thrown in, firing away, doing a bit of damage to the Panther. but it is coming under quite a lot of fire from Panzer Force, Pax and Panther. So this Pershing will of course not have much of a chance at surviving much longer. Was close to taking out that Panther, but just wasn't enough. And there you go, I do believe that is more or less game over for the glorious forces of the 116th Panzer Division. And let us just watch this a bit more before tuning out. Riflemen desperately trying to hold the line, but just taking too much fire as the Panzer Force hunt them down. There we go, a few being sent into the air as the Panzer Force continue their merciless hunt for those few riflemen left. And we are seeing another rocket barrage just hammering down, clearing out the motor pool as well. And it looks like these riflemen are gone, yes indeed, crushed under the treads of the Panzer IV. And if you're sort of sitting around waiting for an attack, of course expect to be attacked with all possible forces. And of course you really have to just try and apply some pressure, because if you just sit around with anyone, you're obviously going to get punched down. And of course I'm also going to have to disagree with that. In fact, had a choice to go for this rather open territory, but of course he didn't. He just rushed in here. Bad move. And that was ultimately what spelled his doom. And let's just rush up this last bit as the last buildings are cleared out. And there you go. A victory for the 116th Panzer Division, allowing Operation Lüttich to continue. So what can we learn from this? Well, of course, mines can be well used, of course, if placed properly. We saw them in front of buildings, we saw them on roads, we saw them do quite a lot of damage. Armored cars were wrecked, infantry teams slaughtered or rendered unusable for quite some time. I mean, it really had quite an effect on the game, and of course forced those two to be a bit more cautious. Other thing to notice, of course, don't attack from the same approach all the time. That is rather what the American commander did wrong. Kept attacking here instead of actually trying to use the entire Western approach, which was much more open, and then sort of trying to force the German player to react there, which of course would have leveled things much more for the American player, but sadly he did not. The mortar was a good choice, but I fear a bit too late. The same with the heavy machine gun. Of course, the Sherman was a good choice, but I also think perhaps having gone for that a bit faster might have helped. Perhaps also some M10s would have been of great use. And of course, otherwise, don't engage heavy armor from the front, try to flank it. And of course, this is rather what could have helped those Panzer forces in the beginning against the Pershing, but sadly they did not do it. Instead, they chose to engage from the front. Anyhow, there you go. I hope you enjoyed this fight. If you did, why not subscribe or tell your friends? And if you didn't, well, why not send in a replay of your own? This is Imperial Dane saying cheers, and don't continue to bash your head into a wall. Try to find a way around that wall and attack from the flank. Cheers.